Hey, thanks for clicking the box. Really appreciate it. If you have not subscribed, please do. Also like us, also share us with your friends. Today, great talk with Jeremy Bronson with GBQ. We talk about some new things they're bringing to Toledo for those business owners without an exit strategy. It's like revolutionary. Like I haven't seen anything like this in Toledo before. We also talk about his pivot from professional athlete into business and how similar some of those things are, which I thought was very interesting as a not very athletic athlete kind of guy. And lastly, trying to strike that balance, which seems almost impossible between, business and family and cheerleading camps and cheerleading tournaments and all the things that these guys do, pivoting from hockey to cheerleading, which is a pretty cool thing too. So anyways, excited to have you watch this and share it. Thanks a lot for watching.
Y'all ready for this?
Welcome to the DeVerna podcast, where we talk about business, life, and how to win at both.
Yeah, I guess that most people, if they recognize your name, like they might recognize it more from the hockey front, right? Do you get that a lot or a little or?
Every once in a while I do, when I'm around the hockey rink and things like that, being out of it for a little while.
Yeah. How long have you been out? Because it doesn't, I'm kind of old, so it's hard, but how long have you been out of the hockey stuff?
So I hung up the skates in 2007, I think it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm old. That happened like in no time. Holy crap.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
I actually gave it up the year that they shut down the sports arena. So my last year was with the Toledo Storm. So
okay.
When the Storm hung it up, I hung it up.
Wow. Okay. So 2007. So that's definitely. So when you pivoted out of that, like tell me about the conversion from hockey life to like real life.
Yeah.
If that's the right verbiage, I don't know.
Right. It was, obviously very, very different. I actually ended up moving to Cleveland. So, you come out of college and you always hear, you got to go get a job,
Sure.
in accounting, working for the Big Four was the big thing coming out of college, going to get your CPA, thinking about it now, maybe extending my hockey career, and there's a ton of things you can do, while you're playing professional hockey. I mean, you can start up an Amazon business and do it on the road and those types of things.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
You think back and say, you know what, I could have started a business when I was actually doing this and things like that. But like I said, you're always, here, go to the Big Four if you're in accounting. So I went to Cleveland for a bit, and then worked for a firm called Grant Thornton.
Yep.
I think at the time they were probably the fifth largest firm around the country. So yeah.
So back to Toledo.
Yep.
And what brought you back to Toledo?
So I'm from Bowling Green. So I had family back here. I had a little one at the time. So she's 8 now, but we moved back to Sylvania here. My family's in Perrysburg. So yeah, just had kids, wanted to get closer to home. My wife's from the Dayton area.
Okay.
So a little bit nicer for her mom to come up and see the kids as well.
Yeah, it's great. So here with Jeremy Bronson, CPA, right? Like you've got all kinds of credentials, actually, like credentials. I don't even know what they mean. Maybe we should start with that. Like all those letters. It's very complicated.
Right. So yeah, CPA, certified public accountant. I got that right out of school about a year after.
Which is a really hard test.
It is.
Like that's one of the harder tests on the planet, because I know some really smart people that I don't think ever ended up getting that, and they went to school for accounting.
Right.
So that's a real deal.
There's a big debate of whether the bar or the CPA's harder.
Yeah.
But it's a definitely
it's a good filter.
Right.
Like it definitely keeps the people out.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I got that, and then recently through doing accounting, getting more involved with business valuations, that type of work. I went and got certified to do valuations, so CVA, Certified Valuation Analyst, and then on top of that, CEPA, so Certified Exit Planning advisor as well. So those two are kind of the same thing, helping people with business valuations, with the baby boomers, huge population of baby boomers right now, 60 plus that, have to transfer their wealth over the next 5 to 10 years, that own businesses. So getting in that field and helping out with that, I thought that would be valuable to get that credential as well.
Yeah. Well, that is like putting a spotlight on one of the things we deal with on a weekly basis is talking to people. Like you talk to a small business owner and they sometimes will put away money in their retirement plans and things, but they're thinking of their business as the retirement plan, right? I mean, is that not exactly on point?
That's exactly on point. I mean, we see, a lot of business owners don't have a 401k plan. Everything that they do in the business goes, back into the business, and, blood, sweat, and tears, that's their baby. So, helping them come up with an exit plan, working with a financial advisor like yourself to make sure, when we do the valuation of the business, is that enough money to, ultimately, is that sale price enough money to, have the retirement that they want to? And if not, what do we do to help them increase the value over the next 3 to 5 years to get them to that dollar amount?
So you guys are even getting into that. Like, okay, so the number isn't as good as I thought it was, because everybody thinks their thing is worth more. Like whether it's a house or a business or whatever, like they think what they own is worth more than what it likely is. So, yeah. Yeah.
And it's a tough conversation to obviously have.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times owners come to us when they're tired and they say, what, I'm done. I'm ready to sell. But then going back to them and say, well, the business isn't as, worth as much as what we think it is. So,
yeah.
But yeah, there's a bunch of different things that you can look at, and to increase the value of the business. So, a lot of people think, all right, whatever, EBITDA, is usually what, people use to measure the value of the business, and then using a multiple of EBITDA. But there's also a lot of, intangibles that, you can look at to help increase the value of the business. So, is the owner running the business, or does he have a management team in place? So, helping that owner get a management team in place, so it's not just all about him. Customer concentration. So, if it's all about risk. So if you have one customer that makes up 90% of your, sales, obviously that business isn't going to be attractive. Whereas, you might have a business with, your largest customer is 5%. So there's a bunch of different factors that we look at and, help them with a plan to minimize risk for that person that's coming in to buy the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to watch the development of these businesses. Like sometimes you've got two tracks that we see. Seems like they start their business and then they kind of always stay on that same path. Like the business is feeding their income and they're feeding their life, or they're using the way we would prefer it, which I would think you would as well. Like they own the business. They start putting people in place to run the business, and then they actually can build their balance sheet a little bit, their personal assets with assets that are developed out of a plan to move over to their personal balance sheet.
Right.
So, which is the ideal situation for us.
Exactly. And that's another conversation that we have with business owners a lot, because they're always trying to minimize taxes as much as possible.
Sure.
So, you might have family members on the payroll so you're, trying to reduce taxes there, or, you might have, some extra travel costs and meals and entertainment costs. So when you do a valuation of the business, you're going through and doing what we call normalized earnings. But if you're normalizing earnings and you've got, $10 10 different normalizations that you're doing, then when that prospective buyer is coming in, they're saying, all right, well, he's running his life, or he or she's running their lifestyle through this business, and that's not what a buyer wants to see. So helping them clean that up over 3 years and say, all right, you're going to take a little bit of a hit in terms of taxes, but we want the financial statements to be clean for that buyer that's coming in, so they can rely on the information. Yeah,
that's an interesting observation. I never really thought of it that way, but we absolutely have a lot of people running their lifestyle through the business, or running their business through the lifestyle, or whatever, depending on which way you want to look at it. Like, that's for sure a big thing that's on the radar. So you're kind of counseling people. So, I mean, are you as much an accountant, or it sounds like you've almost moved to a consulting role a lot more?
Yeah, I would say probably a majority of my work is consulting. A few years ago, I was doing tax returns. I was doing assurance type work. But when I started my accounting firm 5-6 years ago, I was kind of a generalist doing everything. But through that, I met another person, made a commitment to purchase their firm, did that for a couple years. And then we actually merged in with Weber Clark 2 years ago, which now since is merged with GBQ. Yeah. So by doing those mergers, I've been able to be, more focused on the specific, valuation, exit planning, buying and selling businesses, and consulting. I know enough to be dangerous with tax work and things like that to help, but we have a large bench of people that's all they do is tax work. So from the compliance standpoint, being able to leverage them has been a big benefit.
Yeah. So you had an expansion. So 6 years ago, it's you.
Yep.
And then you moved to a quite a lot bigger. I mean, the Weber group is a good group there. And then to expand, like, how big is GBQ now? Because they're home base in Columbus, right? Yep.
So home office is Columbus. They've got an office in Cincinnati, obviously now Toledo, and then they've got an office in Indianapolis now. So we're over 200 plus people.
Wow.
Yeah. So going from one person to 200 person organization in 5 years is definitely different structure.
Yeah, well, it's really nice because I'm familiar. We don't have the size of the scale, but we've got 20 some advisors, and we're down in Columbus now. We've got an office in Maumee, Toledo, Perrysburg, and then some other spaces in Memphis and some of that. But it's nice having people that specialize in certain things.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
That's been the biggest thing, especially with all the changes that have happened over the last couple of years. It's very hard to be a generalist and do everything. I mean, just in the last year, whether it be PPP or employee retention credit, 2 weeks ago in the middle of tax season, they're changing tax, laws and how to calculate, unemployment's not taxable anymore. So to have that bench strength to, have specific subject matter experts in those areas to be able to leverage has been, huge. And whether it be, cost segregation studies to help, reduce taxes, R&D tax credits, with the whole Wayfair and Amazon thing, sales and, state and local tax is a big issue with people. Yeah. So, we've got resources for all those different areas.
Wow. Yeah. That's a big deal. Like you kind of start unpacking that and you think about all that means. So, because you're becoming a one-stop shop like that, like when you start pivoting, because we talked, when you start getting into the PPP loans, and that was kind of one of those things where people received money before they knew what the rules were.
Right.
Well, yes and no, right? They didn't know what the finished rules were. They thought they knew what the rules were. They received the money. They may or may not have spent it. And then the rules were changing soon after.
Yeah. Right? And they're still changing.
Yeah. Right.
Up until probably a month and a half ago, if you were a Schedule C filer and you didn't show any net profit, you couldn't get a PPP loan. they changed the rules a couple of weeks ago, and now it's based on, line 7 of your Schedule C, whatever your income is. So yeah, being able to, like I said, have subject matter experts to really focus on, those specific areas and get real-time information out to our clients has been huge, whether it be, through blog posts, or, we've done tons of webinars over this past year on, specific issues like that when new things come out.
Yeah. So when you do a webinar, like, is that like your current clients, or are you broadcasting that to like the world, or how does that anybody that wants to be on it?
Yeah.
Like,
so initially it was to our current client base, but we have a great marketing team, and people started finding us, through like watching the replays. So that client list started building, and we've got new clients just from doing those webinars.
Oh yeah.
From doing that, just, getting that real-time information.
Well, I think that's one of the things that, like, when we were getting questions that were definitely out of our league, like we were looking for resources, like, and the people were coming to us as somebody, the kind of quarterback, and say, hey, who should we talk to about these things? And I'm like, that is not something I'm familiar with. So we have to find places and people. And I think that was like the commodity, because I think business owners as a whole, which definitely, even though you don't exactly own a big piece of, like, you're definitely wired that way. And so people are looking for where they can get this kind of data, this kind of information. And business owners fall in two camps. Either they like shut down and were like hiding their head in the sand during the COVID times, or they were going to operate business as usual. And I think we saw a lot of both of those, or at least I did.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I really try to do for clients, is I want to be their trusted advisor, because when you're a business owner, you're out there on your own.
Yeah.
You don't have anybody to go to. You can't go to your employees and saying, hey, I'm having this problem with my business. They're going to look at you and say, well, see ya, I'm going to go find another job if you're having this problem.
I don't feel confident anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So I want to be that person that, clients can come to and say, hey, what do I do here? Do you have any advice for me? I work with 30, 50 business owners. So, I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of things that, other owners have been through. So, that's obviously valuable when, situations come up.
For sure. And the level of value that they're getting there is immense.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we have some mutual clients and some friends and some people. And one of the things that you can't recreate is experience. Like, when you're seeing like how 50 different business owners respond to different things, like, you're just getting more repetition. And I get that all the time in my business. And I'm sure that it might be the biggest asset you have, is what you're kind of learning constantly, even when you're not even trying.
Yep.
You know?
And I've got a lot of smart people around me too, so that always helps. I'm not shy in saying I don't know the answer, but together we can figure it out, and trying to figure out that right person to go to. So
yeah, so that's it's interesting to think of this in two different ways. The first is I'm thinking of like the COVID part, but that I don't like. Hopefully we're putting that behind us sometime soon, although it's still definitely present. But to think of what is starting to evolve, and we had a conversation before about something that to us is very new. So like a situation where you kind of like, we were talking about the exit strategy, because, the ways that businesses generally transition is the natural way is, Junior comes in and he's going to start to run the business. And so there's 22 other employees and they're all pissed because Junior is now, leapfrogged all of them. And so hopefully Junior can run it as good as Senior did, but the chances of that are pretty nominal. But so we could talk through that idea or that experience, but also when there's no Junior, or Junior decides he's an artist and he's going to go do something different. He doesn't want to be, in the concrete business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, so how those different, maybe walk us through one or two different things and what you guys at GBQ are starting to bring to Toledo in that way.
Yeah. You know, in order to be that advisor, sometimes, you know, that, you know, the parents might be looking to transition it to their kids or something. You've got to be that person to say, you know what, your kid can't run this business. He's not ready yet, or, you know, he's going to run it into the ground. So you got to be able to tell business owners that. But so, you know, in that case, you know, if he or she doesn't have anybody to transfer the business to, you know, through our merger with GBQ, we've got a strategic alliance with an investment bank down in Columbus called Footprint Capital. So through, you know, we do a lot of they do a lot of merger and acquisition work. So, you know, company A might have, you know, a competitor that's looking to, you know, purchase them, but that might not be the, you know, the best, you know, play for them. We may want to take it out to, you know, some sort of auction. That being, you know, our investment bank has a bunch of connections, whether it be through, you know, strategic buyers, through private equity, you know, whatever. But, you know, they may put it out to an auction where they send it out to 100 different, you know, potential buyers. You say, all right, you know, send in your basically your bid for what you think the company's worth. They'll go through it, say submit your letter of intent, and then, you know, ultimately come up with, you know, who that potential, you know, buyer is, and then go through due diligence. But by going through the process, you're helping, you know, sell the business for the maximum value possible. And obviously you want to sell to the right party, because you don't want a company to come in and, you know, wipe out all your staff or anything like that. So, you know, it has to do a lot with price, but you know, culture is a big thing too when you're doing these acquisitions. Yeah.
Well, I think of when you started talking there, I was thinking about some of the conversations we've had. So if it is Junior that takes over the business, and Junior's got siblings and they're not going to be in the business, how you keep all that stuff in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, like, or, you know, maybe two of the kids are in the business, but the third one isn't, and how it's equitable so that, you know, when mom and dad are gone, that the kids are still able to do Thanksgiving together, you know, because that's like a thing that we've seen is where you've got, you know, a farm's a great example where, you know, the son ends up being the farmer and he's running the farm, and the sister is thinking she's on the outside looking in because she's getting a small cut of some of the money, but the lifestyle is fitting back into the farmer and all those things. And so I think it's interesting that's like, you're kind of making a career of these interesting conversations. And there's like there's so many people that fall into this group that are being affected by this, like the 55 to 70 year olds that are in a spot like this, that just always knew the business was going to be their retirement plan. But it wasn't really a plan. It was a business, but it wasn't a plan for the end of the business or whatever it is.
It's a huge number of businesses that are owned by people over 55 right now. So there's going to be a huge, you know, transition in wealth over the next 5 to 10 years because of that. It's an interesting point that you brought up the family component, because that's one of the, you know, part of the exit planning, you know, strategy that we go through. That's a big thing that we talk about up front is, you know, if there's multiple family members, you know, how is this going to work? Because, you know, like you said, if there's two people working in the business or two of the kids working in the business, but, you know, that third child doesn't work, you know, is it really fair to split it a third when that person's not adding any value to the business?
Right.
So getting those conversations out of the way up front, rather than having it come down to the 11th hour and, you know, having somebody kill the deal because they're not happy with what they're getting. You don't want that to happen. So that's one of the initial conversations you should have with the business owner and the family, and have everybody come to an agreement. The other part of that is, you know, having that conversation with the business owner, you know, because that's all they've probably been doing for the last 40 years is, you know, going in and, that's their baby and that's all they know is that business. So the big question is, all right, once you sell it, what are you going to do?
Right.
Do you want to stay in the business? Most time people aren't happy just going to Florida and hanging it up. They get bored after 6 months and then they're going crazy,
Yeah.
So you have to have a plan after the actual transition as to, what that owner is going to do, and is that going to make them happy?
Well, I think people in the United States as a whole it's so glamorous to retire. Like they have this idea of this retirement, but they don't think of the details of what retirement is,
Right.
So like we talk about this all the time. It doesn't need to be a business owner for this part of the talk. Like you want to transition, you want to retire to something. Mm-hmm. So we have more clients than ever. I mean, I talk about my grandpa. It seems like almost every time that I'm in front of the camera, but also in front of clients. Like he's 97. He's been getting a pension from Ohio BP longer than he worked for them. And like, there's going to be more and more of those people. Like they're not doing so many pensions anymore, but like, you don't want to be like, you retiring is not like, it's no longer like you retire at 60 and you're dead at 67. Like there's a whole, maybe the biggest chapter of your life that you're about to live. Right. So we have lots of people retiring to a job that they like doing instead of a job they have to do.
Right.
But to retire and just think, oh yeah, I'm done. Like that doesn't end well. Like I've seen that. It goes really bad, usually really quickly, especially with people that have been super active running a business or doing stuff every day, every minute. And then the music stops and they're like,
what do I do?
What do I do?
That's my dad. I think he retired when he was around 55, but that was 10, 15 years ago. He hasn't stopped working since then. He just takes on odd jobs every once in a while, does what he wants to do. He picks and chooses what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do, but, keeps him doing something, not just sitting around.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's so many things that you can do to help other people make your life better, be healthy. There's, we obviously in Toledo area, we see a lot of people move down to Florida or they snowbird and all that stuff. But I go down and visit those people. Those people are living down there. Like I was at the park, like this was just before COVID happened. I was down there last year in January, and like I was at a park because I had some time to kill, and there was literally like a crew, like the rowers, like teams of these older people that were doing crew. Like, and I'm like seeing them come in, like they're coming in with their boats with 6-8 people in them. And there's like 1 boat, 2 boats, 3 boats, 4, like over by the villages. It was unreal. Right. Like, and I'm like, who would have thought? And it was like 8 in the morning. Like it was early in the morning. It's interesting to see what people, how full their lives can be if they want it to be,
right.
And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which, makes the COVID just seem immense because they weren't doing anything anyways. And now they have an excuse to not do anything and just, that's it,
Right.
And they're part of the average that gained, 30 or 40 pounds during this last year, which is horrible, So it's funny, but it's not, right?
Right.
So
good.
Yeah. So another thing I'm always interested in. So the pivot for professional athletes. So a pivot because not very athletic guy. I mean, I do athletic things, but I'm not athletic at them. Mm-hmm. But the pivot from professional athlete to professional business, like, do you think there's a lot of things you learned at hockey that have translated for you into the business community as far as like, I don't know, work ethic, like processes, things that you do as part of your lifestyle, culture, or whatever?
Absolutely. When I was growing up playing hockey, I grew up in Bowling Green, Ohio. And I think when I was 10, 11 years old, I actually started playing up in Michigan. Mm-hmm. So my parents were driving me from Bowling Green up to Detroit probably 4, 5, 6 times a week doing that. So I'd get out of
They're all in.
Yeah, right. I'd get out of school, get home, jump in the car, and I was up, doing homework in the car on the way up to practice. You go to practice, you do homework on the way home, and then, go to bed and wake up and do it the next day. So, I did it because I'm very competitive and I wanted to, be part of the best team that there was around. So, at the time, the team I was on was one of the top teams in the country. We actually won 2 national championships in doing it. So, it was a commitment and, something, obviously a lot of sacrifices that you had to do in order to do it. But, like I said, I wanted to, be part of the best team. I knew I wanted to play college hockey. In order to do that, that was the sacrifice that you had to make. Looking forward, 10, 15 years to where I'm at now, everything that I learned through doing hockey, whether it be, teamwork, commitment, hard work, all that stuff translates over to, what I'm doing professionally right now. Waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and doing workouts, before you go to class in college and stuff. I'm usually in the office at 5 in the morning, plugging away, getting stuff done. So, I pretty much credit everything that I learned through hockey and to where I'm at now.
That's a big deal. It feels like there's less of that than there used to be.
Yeah.
Like especially maybe the COVID put the spotlight on it, but it seems like everybody got a chance. There's one's a really funny development, and that is how people dress. Like I think people got real comfortable and real casual real quick.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is work ethic, because they're looking around and they're not seeing a lot of other people with a lot of activity. Mm-hmm. And so the people that do that, like I'm a super early person, I'm in the office ridiculously early, and then I'm in the office and then go to jiu-jitsu and then I'm back to the office and all that stuff. But there's less of that than I've ever seen since I've been in the business stuff for the last 20 some years. It just seems like there was an excuse or an opportunity for people to take their foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah. And exactly what you said, it was an opportunity to take your foot off the gas. I looked at it as an opportunity. There's a bunch of business owners out there struggling. Well, I got to get in front of them and I got to help them. So, I looked at it as an opportunity to help people and, help them get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a great thing. I think a job like that, that's a big job. And it's a lot of responsibility. And I like what you just said there, because you feel the responsibility, as do I. Like there's people that when I get done, I introduce our process and our system to somebody, like when we leave, they're better for having known us. They're better for having met us, And in most cases, even though maybe we're not the solution for everybody, we usually find something that we improve upon for them.
Right.
So I like that responsibility that you're feeling is there. And I'd be curious to know too, before we go, because I know we're starting to bump up on time already, but the idea of how you are able to strike a balance, because when you were back playing hockey, you got to do your homework, show up to school and play hockey.
Yeah.
Or then, those things change, but now you've got a couple girls, got, family, you've got work, you're still trying to, still staying in shape and doing all that stuff. Like, how do you find the time or the ability to have balance for those things?
If my wife was here, she'd be screaming, he doesn't. So.
Yeah, right. I can see that.
But it's tough, because, I'm committed at what I do. I like helping people. But at the same time, there's got to be that work family balance. So that's why I try to get in there early in the morning. My family's not up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's an opportunity where I see I can get into the office rather than, staying, at the office until 8 o'clock at night. I rather go in the morning and get home around, 5 and 6 o'clock so I can see my kids and family and things like that. So, that's a sacrifice you have to make. I'm committed to, I want to make sure that I'm at all their, cheerleading competitions and things like that. I try to help out with, taking them to practice and things like that. So, being in the position I am, in GBQ, we're really flexible in terms of that, in terms of work-life balance, family comes first. So, just, trying to do what you can to get through it and, make sure your kids and your wife's taken care of. So,
yeah. It's hard to kind of find that balance to be able to do, especially when you're so passionate about what you do. And like, I don't know how you feel about this, I'm probably putting you on the spot in some level, but like my job doesn't feel like work to me.
Right.
So I get caught up in it. And sometimes, like I remember this was forever ago, my was going to maybe come work with me. And I said, well, come up and follow me for a day. And so he comes up and he's like, well, when should I get there? So I'm going to go to the office and then I'm going to go to martial arts. But why don't you just come after I go to martial arts? So he gets there, let's say 8 o'clock, and then we go to work. We're working, and it's like 6 p.m. And I have like one more appointment, and I'm like, oh, dude, sorry. You're probably hungry for dinner or something. And he's like, we never ate lunch.
Right.
Like, how about lunch? And I'm like, oh yeah. Sorry about that. Like I probably had I used to keep like a handful of peanuts or mix or whatever. And I just moved on trucked through, didn't think twice about it. And yeah, he like made that observation, and he did not end up coming to work with me, by the way. But that's like a pretty natural thing. I was just caught up in all the things I was doing, and when you like it, I mean, it's not even like I think I'll be doing this till I'm at least 70. Yeah. So I'm like maybe halfway through my career.
Right. I mean, it's funny you say that, because you look at those small things that you can do and try to, get the most out of your day, whether, on my way over here, I'd grab something to eat and, ate in the car, so I didn't have to sit down and, waste a half hour to eat lunch somewhere. Or,
right.
You try to schedule your phone calls if you're going to be in the car for a half hour, so you can do the call in the call in the car if you need to, and things like that. So it's, what little things can you do to maximize what you're going to get out of the day?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm sure that you have that pivot when you're in your day-to-day work job, when you're talking to clients that are like doing so many things. Like that's a transition. I've had this talk with all the advisors that work for us, and like lots of my business owners, like make a list. Yep. A to-do list and a not to-do list, and figure out about what your dollar per hour is, which is easy for a consultant. It's mediocre for me, but I think of like, hey, this is about what my dollar per hour is. So everything below that, I should be farming out. Mm-hmm. And then there's certain things that I'm absolutely the right person for this job. And then for those things, I'm not the right person.
Right.
Which is sometimes hard to do, especially with somebody who's been doing that for 20 or 30 years, right? Yeah. Like maybe impossible.
Yeah. So when when I hear business owners say that, they're so busy and they can't get stuff done, when make a list of all the tasks and, ask yourself, 1, can you automate it? No. If not, 2, can you delegate it? So, in looking at that dollar per hour is this thing, is this task really worth my time in doing, or, can I delegate it down to someone?
Well, I would think that with the small business owner who wants to sell his business, if he's so important to that business, how does he sell it?
Yeah.
Right. Like how does it translate to anybody else? If you're everything to that business, like you got to make yourself less important. Like that's the key, right?
Yeah. I mean,
the tail end.
You pretty much say, hey, can you go away for a month, and can the business run without you for a month?
Yeah.
If not, then you got a problem.
You got some work to do.
Yeah.
So that's where they call you, right?
Exactly.
They track you down and figure you out. And you're bringing something to Toledo. To my knowledge, there's never been anybody that was set up to facilitate. I mean, usually the transactions that I've been a party to or seen happen is usually like people that know they're operating in the same space. And so I'm a little bit older, you're a little bit younger, you seem like a business that's comparable to mine. So let's talk about you buying it.
Yep.
And you're expanding that, not just to the people I know, just the 4 companies that are kind of like mine, but you're expanding it really across the nation potentially, or to a much larger group of potential buyers in that as well, right?
Yeah. So with our strategic alliance with the investment bank, like footprint, there's no other investment bank in town that has that capability. So that's very unique to Toledo here, and being able to have the basically the capability of what they have and the resources and those types of things. So yeah, we're really excited about building that aspect here in Toledo.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big deal. That's a big addition. I'm glad to have learned about it here recently.
Yeah. And
I think we're going to end up having some of the ability to work together on some of that stuff, because that's a really big deal. And it's a good thing for people to hear that exists, because they don't have to put all the responsibility on themselves to like go find somebody to buy their business. Like They can sell their business for what it's worth.
Yep.
And it can continue, and all those people, because generally, there's a lot of people that aren't retiring. So just because the business owner that he's done doesn't mean everybody else is ready to hang it up too. That never happens that way.
Yeah. And it may not be that baby boomer, there's plenty of, business owners that are in their 40s and 50s, with COVID hitting last year, some of the private equity deals died down a little bit just because of the uncertainty. So I was actually in a training yesterday. I think somebody said that there's $1 trillion worth of dry powder. That's what they basically say. That's how much money the private equity firms are sitting on to basically invest in, these other businesses and look at buying, potentially buying them. So they're out there and they're looking for businesses. So, we try to be that matchmaker and, help business owners, basically capitalize on the best opportunity.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking time today. Really appreciate it. Good stuff, man.
Thanks for having me.
Good.
It's great.
Bringing us to Toledo is awesome. I love it. Thanks, man.
DeVerna offers products and services using the following business names: Creative Financial Partners, Insurance and Financial Services, Ameritas Investment Company, LLC, AIC, member FINRA, SIPC, Security Investments, Ameritas Advisory Services, AAS Investment Advisory Services. AIC and AAS are not affiliated with Creative Financial Partners. Products and services are limited to residents of states where the representative is registered. This is not an offer of securities in any jurisdiction, nor is it specifically directed to a resident of any jurisdiction. As with any security, request and prospectus from your representative, read it carefully before you invest or send money. A representative will contact you to provide requested information. Representatives of AIC and AAS do not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney regarding the situation.
Thanks for watching.